Welcome back to Let the Qur'an Speak. Now, Brother Shabir, every week we go into whole new topics and we discuss interesting things. This is a topic that tends to come up over and over again, especially if you look at Islamic history. This idea that Islam was spread by the sword, this idea that Muslim invaders went from one land to another land, forcing people to convert to Islam, which is why Islam spread so quickly. Because starting from a small town in Mecca, it reached most of the world in amazing speeds. And we had Muslims spanned across the globe at an amazing pace. And a lot of people do attribute that to the idea that these people were forced to convert to Islam. How much truth does that carry?
Well, I think we should distinguish between two things here. One is the spread of the Islamic empire, and two, the spread of Islam as a faith. To a certain extent, one can say, okay, the Islamic empire expanded the way that empires normally did expand, which was in the past by the use of might. The lines of countries eventually came to be drawn after battles were fought, and where the two sides came to a kind of a stalemate, that's where the line gets drawn in between. And we know that this side belongs to that army and this side belongs to the other army. Eventually we have countries being marked on our globe in this particular way. So empires did expand in this particular way, and at the time when Islam started out as a very small group of people, or Muslims were a very small group of people, they had to struggle for their own existence against the many others who were struggling against them. And eventually they did become a formidable group who were able to expand as well militarily. And so to that extent, one can say, okay, the Muslim empire expanded like other empires did expand. But the other part of it is, no, it's not right to say that Islam spread as a faith by the sword. I mean, if you wanted to say that the power of government caused the religion to spread, one might say that Christendom was helped by the fact that Constantine became the governor of Rome, and by adopting the Christian faith, he made it official, and through the power of Constantine, Christianity spread. But that's not how we would look at Christianity as a faith. There is a certain calling here. There is an attractiveness to the religion as a faith, and so too with Islam. There was an attractiveness in the faith itself, and people embraced it.
Now, wouldn't it be safer, especially in those times, just to embrace the faith of the invaders, just to be safe? I mean, just to make sure that there's no spite, that they won't walk down the market and just pick up what they want. They figure if this is a Muslim, we'll leave them alone.
Naturally, when the ruling power shares a certain religion, that becomes the religion of the state, then it becomes more convenient for people, even if they have no fear. It just simply becomes convenient for people to adopt the religion of the state. So where Islam became the state religion, naturally people found it convenient. But at the same time, we should say that people sometimes do hold on to their traditions, regardless of what's happening at the state level. We can take the example of Muslims, for example, living in Canada. We don't care that at the state level we have secularism or even atheism or agnosticism. It doesn't matter to Muslims that they may be living in a non-Muslim nation. They retain their Islam. And a similar thing happened in India, where Muslims ruled India for 800 years, but India remained largely Hindu. So Hindus were the majority, but the Muslims were the leaders. So it is possible that many people remained on their ancestral religions, even though Islam became the ruling power, and Islam was not forced on these individuals.
Now, you speak of Canada, but in Canada, everyone is protected. No matter what faith you're from, you have the same protections. Can we say the same about in the past when Muslim empires took over? Would a Hindu or a Christian or a Jew have the same powers as a Muslim would?
Well, we cannot say that all situations were ideal, especially when we're speaking about the past, and we're speaking about people in the past with attitudes that may be non-Islamic, but nevertheless present among some Muslims. But in general, what does Islam teach about this? If Islam comes into a region, nobody can be forced to become a Muslim. And non-Muslims must be treated with every respect and dignity as well. In fact, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, became a leader in Arabia after many years of struggle and resisting the enemy forces, eventually he granted immunity to those who were opposed to him, to his enemies, and he gave protections that were unprecedented to people who were Jews and Christians living in that area. And in what is now referred to as the Constitution of Medina, drawn up by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there was a guarantee that the Jews and Christians, even though as minorities, they would have access to the high offices of Muslims as well. And we have the case of Indonesia, where Indonesia became the largest Muslim nation, the nation with the largest Muslim population. And it is very clear that no Muslim army advanced into Indonesia, but in fact Muslim traders went there. And people were impressed with the behavior and characters of the character and behavior of the Muslim traders. And that made them decide that Islam is the right religion for them. They embraced Islam, and Indonesia became a Muslim country.
Now, it wasn't also economically feasible to convert to Islam because there was a different tax levied on those that were not Muslims. Now, when we put this, isn't it clear that the state, through the means of economics, is trying to convert the masses?
Not necessarily. In fact, there were different attitudes towards the jizya, or this tax, but on the whole, the tax was supposed to be an alternative to the Muslim zakat tax. Zakat is a sort of a tax where the Muslim is required, as a part of his faith, to pay a certain amount in charity, and that would go into the Muslim state treasury, and Muslim officials would go around to the individual citizens to collect their zakat. So this is collected in a similar way to which taxes are collected in other empires. And non-Muslims are not forced to be part of this zakat system, because zakat is also a religious duty for the Muslims. So to keep their conscience clear, they do not pay a zakat tax, but they pay another tax, a jizya, for which in return they benefit from some state systems. Like, for example, the military system, which protects all of the citizens, so that whereas a Muslim would be drafted into the army to go and fight and protect the entire Muslim state, including Muslims and non-Muslim citizens, by paying the jizya tax, the non-Muslim is then free from obligation to enter into the army. And for many people, this is a boon, in fact. They do not have to go risk their lives on the front line protecting the entire state, including Muslims and non-Muslims.
So then, to conclude very quickly, we can say safely that the majority of the Islamic Empire was not spread through the sword. No one was forced to convert. Nobody's lives were in danger in case they didn't convert.
Yes, and the individuals who embraced Islam largely do so because they find Islam to be attractive as a faith. And this is happening even today in places like Canada and the United States of America, where obviously Islam is not being forced on anyone. It sometimes even seems disadvantageous personally to be a Muslim. Who wants to be a Muslim when Muslims are being looked down upon and accused and suspected? But people are embracing the faith because they're finding it logical and reasonable. And when they compare it with other faiths, they ask, why not be a Muslim?
Thank you, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Please, stay tuned.